Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. B'shut Avi Mori. I'd like to share with you some words of Torah, and of course today's breakfast is dedicated to Nishmat Robert Haddon by his loving family. Please make berachot to Nishmat. All the signs are on the table with his name. My friends, let's begin. The pasuk tells us a very interesting line. Ve'alehem titenu 42 ir. The halakha is that if a person, by mistake, accidentally kills somebody, okay? They didn't mean to do it, right? He didn't hate the guy from before. He's not upset with him. There's no reason why he should have killed him. It's not like he's a Yankee fan, the other guy's a Met fan, right? No reason why they should have any animosity between the two people. And then he kills him. The whole of Masechet Matot deals with this idea of how a person who's killed accidentally, what he has to do. So what does he do? As we know, the pasuk says, he goes, in that case, when it's completely accidental, he goes to Ir Miklat, a city of refuge. That's what he does. And he has to stay in the city of refuge until the Kohen Gadol dies. Okay, that's what the halakha is. Interestingly enough, by the way, anyone who's never learned Makot, there's multiple people that can die to get you out of jail free. It's not only the Kohen Gadol. Did you know that? It's also the Kohen Mashuach bin Hamal. It's also the runner-up to the Kohen Gadol. It's also the retired Kohen Gadol. Right? It's unbelievable. You read the Mishnah, you start to realize that, what's it called? In the Torah also, they were looking to find ways to get you out of jail free card. It's not only in the state of New York. Okay, fine. So either way, the amazing thing about this pasuk is something that we find. So you ask anybody, how many Ir Miklat are they? Everybody says 6. And everybody's wrong. Why? Because on top of the 6, there's another 42 cities, the cities of the Leviim. So how many cities do you have in total that are cities of refuge that you could run to? 48. So the Gemara asks, so why do you tell me 6 if there's 48? Inflation? What's the reason? The answer, the Gemara actually differentiates between the 42 cities that are considered Ir Miklat and the 6 cities which are the daddy Ir Miklats. As one example, the Gemara says the difference between the two is that the 6 cities are kolet. They free you from your ability to kill the guy. They protect him, even if the guy doesn't realize that he's in Ir Miklat. And he's walking along the road, he trips on a rock, falls to the left, and now he's in the city, the outline of the city of the Ir Miklat. Halakha is, if it's one of the 6, they protects him. If it's one of the 42, then he needs to know that he's going into a city of Ir Miklat. That's just as an example, one difference between the two. However, I want to point out something else which I think is very, very beautiful. I want to share with you the words of the Kli Yakar on this beautiful teaching. And on them, on top of the 6, give them 42 more cities. He says as follows. First of all, by the way, I want to just throw you a wonderful, unbelievable line from from the Kli Yakar. Listen to this, because this one's a gem. Keneged mem bet hanuyot. The Jewish people we know, when they did their journeys in the desert, how many stops did they make? 42, right? Not just because they had to go to the bathroom, go get iced coffee, right? It's because al pi hamunah yisau, right? Al pi hamunah yahanu. They camped and they traveled only by God's will. There's 42 different stops that they make across the desert. Keneged mebet hanuyot sh'Yisrael chanu b'hem vehayu bekulam kegerim kach netenu leLeviim. So too did they give these cities to the Leviim. Now, first of all, on a very high level, it's a very interesting thing. It seems like we're being told over here that the 42 cities of refuge are tied to the 42 stops that the Jews made in the desert. What's the connection between those things? That's got to light up your prefrontal cortex. Got to start to think about all these unbelievable connections between these two things. Beautiful. However, I just want to share with you what the Kli Yakar says. In these 42 stops, did the Jews live in those places? No. Right? They were from Egypt, and they were going to Israel. That's where they were going. Every spot on the way was what? Was just a pit stop. What's the problem with these pit stops? One of them could be a day, and the longest one, what was the longest stop the Jewish people had in the desert? How many years? How long was it? 19 years. Couldn't be over 40 years. The longest stop was 19 years. They stayed in one place for 19 years. So my friends, so some of the places were longer, some of them were shorter, but the point is, none of them were home. All of those places, every single one of those places was a place where the Jewish people were kigerim, they were like sojourners. They were not at home in that place. They were not from that place. So therefore, when God gave them the 42 cities of refuge, He made sure that they would feel what, like they were being gerim. Listen to this, and I want you to hear this because this is awesome. Why did God make the 42 cities of refuge the cities of the Leviim? Why did He make those cities? I don't know, one is in the Yehuda, one Benjamin, one belongs to the Benot Tzlofchad, Mabarim. Make them everywhere. What's the difference? Listen to what He says. You run away after killing someone. Actually, you fall off a ladder. You're swinging an axe, the axe handle goes off. You're spackling a roof, the whole thing comes down and kills somebody. Whatever the case might be, why are you in that situation? Now I go to the Ir Miklat. This place, now I came to the Ir Miklat, I'm Shama Keger. I'm a foreigner. I don't live here. Ger over here doesn't mean convert. It means someone who's not from this place. V'yesh lachush, pen yomeru lo yoshivei haaretz. If this guy lives in the Ir Miklat, how long are you going to live in the Ir Miklat for? Nobody knows. Till the Kohen Gadol, or someone that we're calling Kohen Gadol till he dies. So I don't know how long I'm going to live there. Until I get the chance to leave this place, what are people going to call me? An outsider. You don't live here. You're not from here. We are the locals. Who are you? You're a nobody. Al ken tziva. Therefore God said, the cities of refuge should be the cities of the Levites. Because the Leviim also, this also wasn't their place. Right? Like the Pasuk says, because the Levi is en lo chelik v'nachala. He has no portion. So he also didn't feel at home. So therefore, the guy who had to run away would not feel different than the Levi himself. V'yomeru lo, and they would tell him, the guy who was being told, you're not from here, you're an immigrant, go home. Mum shebecha al tomad lechaverecha. You also don't belong here. This is also not your land. And therefore the guy he would be made to feel more comfortable in his place of exile. Like the Pasuk says, you understand because you also were in Egypt. You also know what it feels like. My friends, I want to point out something unbelievable here. Effectively, what we're being told is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'rahamav al kol ma'asav. God's mercy is not just on the best of His creations; it's on all of His creations. So you have a guy here who's in exile. What is Hashem thinking about? How's the guy going to feel when he goes into exile? You know what? If everybody else lives here, he's going to feel like an outsider. I have a great idea. I'm going to make the place that he goes to a place where nobody is an insider, so no one can feel like an outsider. What do we learn from this? By the way, where else do we have an example of this in Bereshit? Huh? Well, go ahead. You nailed it first go. Okay, but you know when in school they used to say, show your work. Right? Yosef ve'echav. The Pasuk says that Yosef, he took all the people in Egypt and he moved everybody around. Why? Because now that his brothers were coming in this difficult journey from Eretz Israel, they were going to come and they were going to feel like outsiders. So what did he do? He moved all of the Egyptians around so that everybody was an outsider. So that no one would be able to make his brothers feel like they were outsiders. What a beautiful sensitivity on behalf of Yosef. So my friends, we're finding this over here with Ir Miklat also. Now why am I telling you this? It's not because I want to teach a lesson to any one of you, bar minan, that kills accidentally. Hopefully, that's a rare occurrence. I'm going to try and give something that's a little bit more relevant than that. The answer is understood with a mashal from the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai gives a beautiful mashal. There was once a guy, Hazi, down in his luck. He had no food at home. He was forced to be able to steal something so his wife and kids can eat. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Okay? All right. What happens? He gets caught, gets dragged before the king. The king says, I'm so sorry. The policy here in our country is the person who steals, you kill him. Behead him. Behead him. All right? The guy says, okay, your majesty, but please, before you kill me, do me a favor. He says, I have a secret that was handed down from generations. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-great-great, all the way down to me. I'm the only one in the world who knows it. Please, just before you kill me, let me pass my secret on so it doesn't die with me. King says, is it a good secret? He said, the best. He says, okay, what's the secret? He says, I learned from my great-grandfather a technique where you can plant a seed in the ground, and instantly, on the same day that you plant it, it grows into a full tree filled with fruit. The king thinks to himself, Shema Yisrael, that's a nice trick. Right? Miracle Grow don't do that. Let's go. We got to figure this out. Got to see it. He says, can I just show it? I want to demonstrate it. So you learn how to do it. And once you learn how to do it, then at least everyone will know and it won't die with me. He says, okay, what do you need? He says, get me a seed. What kind? He says, any kind. Works with any seed. Wow. They go get him an apple. Cracks open the apple. Takes out a seed. He says, okay, now I need a cup filled with water. They get him. He says, I need frankincense and myrrh, and I need this item, that item. The guy is a hadasas and mamanim, right? Right? He goes through all the different things that he needs in order. They bring him every one of the spices. He mixes it in the water that everyone's watching like this. He says, okay, pulls the seed out. It's wet. He sticks it back in, pulls it out. He goes, okay, it's ready. He goes, but there's one condition. The only way it works is if the person who plants it, it's a very holy thing that I'm doing. If the person who plants it has to be a person who never stole anything from anyone in their whole life. They were never dishonest. They never ripped off anybody. If a person plants it and he's dishonest, don't work. So it's got to. He says, I would love to plant it, but as you know, this is why we're here. I stole to support my family. So he turns to the finance minister of the king. He says, you plant it. The finance minister goes white. He says, he goes, you know, I don't know how to say this. Your Majesty, I was going to tell you, but last week there was an item. Yeah, I was going to present you the quarterly reports, but I couldn't really put that because I don't know, the thing was missing. I don't know. The king looks. He says, the finance minister. He goes, okay. The Ganav says, no problem here. He says, doesn't have to be the finance minister. He goes, why don't we have the foreign minister? Here you go. Foreign minister goes, one after the next, every guy, bifledge, they're going to be exposed. Finally, the guy says, okay, listen, none of the ministers can do it. He says, Your Majesty, Fadl. The king says, I'll tell you the truth. I never said this before when I was a kid. He goes, my father had this beautiful crown. I wanted it for myself. When no one was looking, I swiped it. You know, he goes, you stole from my father. It's not going to work. We got to find someone. The king, the Ganav, gets down on his knees and he says, Your Majesty, your foreign minister, your finance minister, your chief of operations, the chief of police, this guy, that guy, nobody can plant it because everybody stole, even the king himself. And you want to kill me because I stole? You can't find one guy in this room that didn't steal. Why are you punishing me? Why are you killing me for my action when you're willing to allow it in your royal court? Ben Ishchai. The lesson, my friends, is very, very simple. You know, sometimes you have a person who's an accidental murderer. All of us are accidental murderers. Gemara says, a person who's mali pnei haviro berabim, right? You embarrass a person, it's as if you slaughtered him. That's what it says. As if you killed him. The Gemara compares embarrassing someone, humiliating someone, to literally killing him. So much so, the Gemara brings a story of a person who was giving tzedakah to a poor man. He didn't want him to see. So every week he would put the money under the door. One day, the ani, trying to catch the guy to say thank, opens the door. He wasn't ready. Who was it? Marukva and his wife. They didn't want the ani to be embarrassed every time they saw the rabbi. Turned on their heel, they start running. The guy's chasing them, trying to see who his benefactor is. And what does he do? In order to not let the guy be humiliated, him and his wife jump into the oven of the baker of the town. Okay? Now, it's not fully, fired up, right? Middle of the night, but they used to keep the ovens hot the whole night, right? Even when in Hala they used to do it. They would keep it burning. People would bring their food, right? Their Shabbat food would go into the oven of the baker, okay? And the Gemara surmises from the story, better a person should throw himself. Don't embarrass the person. Why? Killing him, embarrassing him is like killing him. Killing him is Yaharek V'al Yavor. So embarrassing is Yaharek V'al Yavor. That's what the Gemara seems to be saying. My friends, if a person accidentally kills, what's the solution to that? What does the Ir Miklat do to rehabilitate a person who accidentally, by mistake, embarrasses someone, humiliates someone, character assassinates someone? The answer is you expose him to the highest level of sensitivity. Where the Torah says, listen, I don't want to make you feel, even for 1 second, that you're any worse or any less than anybody else. So therefore, everyone in the whole town has to be a guest. So that for 1 second, you should not feel like a guest. Isn't that wild? Once you show a person that level of sensitivity to a human being, you heal the sickness that people have, a desire to make somebody feel less than. I remember hearing about Benzi Dunner, Alav Shalom, in London. He used to have a house filled with poor people all the time, non-stop. I was zocher to go and see. People would come while they were collecting, they would stay in his house, they would sleep over, there'll be meals, morning, noon, and night. Anyway, one day, he's a poor guy, he was supposed to be there for a week. He was there for a second week, and then he was there for a third week. And every week that passes, he feels worse, because he only told him he was coming for a week. Now he needed to stay, he didn't have enough money. 2 weeks, now 3 weeks. Eventually, how do you feel? More aib? Aib. Anyway, the guy's at breakfast, he doesn't know what to do with himself, he's eating. He turns to the guy next to him, and he says, I feel terrible. I'm already here for 3 weeks, I feel like they're going to throw me out soon. Not realizing who's he sitting next to? The Baal Habayit, the owner of the house. Baal Habayit looks back at the guy, he says, don't worry, I've been here for years and no one ever threw me out. If that's not the most beautiful thing in the world, the Baal Habayit saying to this guy who overstayed his welcome and making him realize that there was no such thing as overstaying your welcome if you need help, that's the most beautiful thing in the world. So the first thing a person needs to be able to experience, if they want to combat this accidental assassination that happens with people, is to realize that the way you feel, or the way you want to feel, is the way you should make other people feel. And that by mistake, if someone did something wrong and you want to criticize them and you want to knock them down, maybe you ought to ask yourself if there's any difference between them and you. You did this wrong. Yeah, but you also do that wrong. Like the Ganav in the story of the Ben Ish Chai. You speak Lashon Hara like that? Oh, did you never speak Lashon Hara? My friends, if we asked ourselves before we criticize someone else, Hocheach tochiach, I thought to myself, it says in the Torah, you want to rebuke someone. Hocheach tochiach amitecha. Rebuke, you shall surely rebuke your friend. Why does it say Hocheach tochiach? It should say Tochiach and amitecha, rebuke your friend. Maybe the answer is Hocheach tochiach means for every rebuke you want to give another guy, you got to give 2. 1 to yourself, and then to the other guy. After you passed your own mustard, after you got to a place, okay, where you could skate through, then you have a right maybe to say something to somebody or about somebody else. So my friends, in the time of the Ben HaMisarim, we have to be so careful. What a great message to be able to institute in our mindsets is that whenever you want to judge someone else, first you turn that piercing glance and that piercing gaze on yourself, and only afterwards, kshot atzmecha ve'achar kach keshot aharim. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.